Have you ever seen something from the corner of your eye that wasn't there a moment before? How about hearing from a friend of a friend that while they were hiking somewhere, they thought they saw something at best improbable, but when they spoke to, say, a park ranger or someone managing the area, they left you with a simple explanation that just left a little bit to be undesired. My name's Jack, and this is my colleague Chris, and we are senior wardens for the Creature Conservation Initiative. We protect the world from the creatures of superstition and myth, but more importantly, protect those same creatures from the world. So, as I say, my name is Jack, and me and my colleague here, Chris, we've been working for quite a while for the Creature Conservation Initiative, a secret worldwide organisation that looks after all those less than well-known beasts that exist out there. You'll have heard of them, the fairies, the sea creatures that seem just a little bit too fantastic, and some of those birds that don't seem to really fit into the world. And you've sat there and you've heard of them and you've read the stories, but they're all fake, aren't they, Chris?
They are absolutely fake. I've never seen a cat in my life.
Exactly, never seen a cat. I think that's probably the wrong one there for you, Chris. But we'll probably need to station you in some better places. But no, well, what we're actually here to do is actually lift the lid a bit on what actually exists out there, and to introduce you to the world that you live in, but you don't really know about. It's very, very strange. I mean, how easy do you find it to actually persuade the general public that they didn't really see what they are so certain that they just did?
Well, it's shockingly easy these days. You know, with social media and everything, you can just basically tell them whatever you want and someone will believe it and spread it for you. So in that way, it's kind of easy, but it's always been frustrating because we meet all these creatures and interact with these fabulous beings, and we can't we can't tell anyone about them.
I know it does drive you insane a little bit working as a operator or agent or whatever. There's so many different names for us. I mean, it just kind of swaps depending on which country you're in at that moment. But yeah, it's who would have thought that things like movies like Men in Black was actually a bit more of a documentary rather than a rather than a fictional film. But well, at least in the way that they do things, and they were quite right, the writers, when they said that people don't want to believe the fantastical and the weird. They want it to be normal. They want it to all be nice and safe. And I guess we're here to just say, sorry, it's not that safe.
Not safe anymore.
Right.
Yeah. So what are we talking about today?
Well, I thought we'd start off with one of my favourite beasts that I ever handled. And probably one of the not even probably, it was literally the first one I ever handled as an agent. I wasn't actually even I was obviously trained and qualified and whatnot, but I wasn't far from my training. I was waiting for my first proper posting, and when but for a little while up close in Scotland in the Orkneys, there was just, I think, an agent who was being transferred somewhere else or was having a different bit of training or something. So the team up there was low on agents, and I was just going up there for a few weeks to handle it. But Yeah, the creature that we're going to be talking about is the Nuckelavee,
Interesting.
also known
It's
as the Devil of the Sea in the Orkneys.
all right.
Have you ever come across
Haven't
the Nuckelavee?
I thought I saw one day when I was in Shetland, but I wasn't sure. It's one of these watery horse situations, isn't it?
Oh yeah, you're not too far wrong on that one. Yeah, they are kind of a watery horse, but they are absolutely terrifying to see. Um, I mean, there's not really an easy way, a nice way to describe it. In the dark, you can very easily mistake it for a very, very, very large horse with a very, very, very large rider. They're incredibly dangerous to really kind of encounter, and yeah, it's based around the Orkney Islands. You don't really get them hanging around anywhere else in the country or anywhere
Oh,
else in the world. And for a very, very long time, it was a creature of Scottish and more specifically Orkney myth. And honestly, it's one of the things that we tend not to bother about too much as operators. It's very, very rare for them to come out of the sea, and it's not one of the main parts of the training, but it is one of the things that if you're going to operate in the Orkneys, you tend to find out about. But yeah, your kind of description of them being a big like horse of the sea kind of thing works quite well, except for they're described as having the head and torso in the shape of a man attached to the back of a horse. So it's like the torso at the base, like around your waist. All of a sudden, it's fused into the back of a horse.
interesting.
Oh, I know, it's absolutely terrifying when you really see one, especially in the dark. It has a huge head and a large mouth that protrudes out a little bit like a pig, which is a bit surprising when you're kind of looking at a horse. I mean, look at a horseman, essentially. You're thinking something along the lines of horseman, centaur. You're not really thinking pig.
Not really.
No. The thing is, though, it also has a horse's head, obviously. Like I say, literally an entire horse
Obviously.
with the man from the torso upwards on.
Oh, so it's not replacing the horse. It's like a rider, but fused with a horse.
Yeah,
basically.
quite literally a case of the rider is on the back of the horse, but fused into the horse.
Ah, okay, I get it. But that's
Yeah.
definitely not what I saw.
Well, the thing is, the creature has one single massive red eye that sits on the horse's forehead, essentially, which is very unnerving. And it wouldn't be. It's not looking great, but you start adding in the horse's hair and the man's skin, and you kind of think it looks like some Cronenbergian nightmare or something kind of attached together. But no. To add to the horror, this thing doesn't have any hair or skin. It is the raw body, and you can see all its veins, all the nerves pulsing around its entire body. You can see all the muscles, like there's no skin. Essentially think of your Sunday joint. And that's basically what it looks like in a way. That's the surface of its skin. And yeah, it is not a very nice thing to see.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I kind of encountered it was, like I say, I was filling in for a operator in the Orkneys in Scotland, that kind of area, and the rest of the team went out on a call. I think to go and literally deal with some imps or something like that. those cheeky things that. I mean, if I'm perfectly honest, I think throughout my entire career, I've probably been called out to imps more than anything else. Don't know if you've had the similar kind of experience, but those things just seem to pop up everywhere and cause no end of trouble.
Oh yeah, I've seen more than I ever want to in my life.
But yeah, as well as that, say the rest of the team were just going to handle that, and I was actually mostly supposed to be staying on site, just manning the lines and giving anyone support that was necessary. But basically, I got a phone call through saying that along the northern coastlines, there had been a sighting of something that, well, terrified the living hell out of pretty much anyone that was seeing it. And so when I approached, obviously came across and found, well, as I say, this horror show kind of marching up the beach towards me at the time. Now,
Oh man.
Oh yeah.
So what do you do? I mean, you're not going to run away from a horse. It's going to be faster than you, right?
Well, there is that, and it's quite an interesting one to deal with. But before we kind of go on to how you get rid of them, I feel like you need to speak a little bit about what their motives are. So, with the Nuckelavee, or the devil of the sea, or whatever, it's, as I say, it's supposed to be a malevolent spirit. But based on what our research has shown, it's less of a malevolent spirit, more of an annoyed one. Well, it was always kind of expected to be there. Everyone knew about it over like hundreds and hundreds of years ago. Everyone in the Orkneys knew that they existed, but they didn't see them very often until they started to burn kelp. Apparently, the toxic kind of fumes that come from burning kelp, and the noxious fumes and everything, essentially annoyed the Nuckelavee in its sea domain, and it essentially came up onto the surface to voice a complaint. It's probably the best way to put it. But the problem,
it's so wild, the things that trigger these creatures sometimes.
Well, yeah, burning seaweed and burning kelp basically enraged it enough to come out onto the sea, but onto the land. But instead of it turning around and writing a strongly worded letter like as Brits like to do, it actually came on and started killing crops and horses.
That's not great.
Yeah, it turns out it's got an incredibly toxic breath, which infected obviously the crops on the farms and whatnot all along the isles, which then obviously much endangered life within the area. And the toxic breath also gave the horses of the island a disease called mortashine.
What on earth is that?
If I'm perfectly honest, I could never really find out that much about mortashine. But all I know was it was damn well fatal. Now, obviously, as is how it always is in myth, the creature didn't just immediately come the moment someone lit a bit of seaweed on fire and walked away from everything. It was held under the sea during the summer months by the mother of the sea, or the mither of the sea, which is an entirely different thing for us to talk about at another day. But essentially, the mother of the sea think good, the devil of the sea think bad.
All right.
Nice and
Makes
easy
sense.
way to think of it. But only in the kind of around the summer months when the mother of the sea had the strength to hold it down. In actual fact, we're not really too sure why the hell it didn't seem to bother anyone around around the summer months that much. I don't know. Maybe it was just selective. Maybe it really, really, really hated the smell of burning seaweed in winter Maybe the cold makes it worse.
Maybe.
I've never really been around burning seaweed. But yeah. So when it was able to escape from the mother of the sea, it started coming up onto land, or so Orkney legend went. Now, there is a bit of an odd way in which you handle these creatures. The only thing that seems to stop the Nuckelavee, because this is one of those endangered ones that that obviously we'll speak about, and we very much do not allow killing of these monsters in any way, shape, or form unless there is no other choice. Which, again, very, as you know, is very much the ethos of the organisation. It doesn't die unless it's going to kill someone. Essentially, is how I see it. But the funny thing is, the way in which you keep these creatures away is running water.
But you'd think they'd like that.
I know, they come from the bloody sea.
I don't know any water that's more running than that.
Exactly. But it seems to be fresh running water keeps them away. There's actually the only known encounter, or mythological encounter, in the public eye. Basically talks about a man named Tamas, who, and this is a very, very long time ago, encountered one of these creatures, ran as fast as he possibly could, screaming and shouting, effing and blinding as he's going, and somehow managed to essentially get across a stream, at which point the noxious breath did knock him out, but the creature left him alone. The one thing I can say for certain is, if it had caught him, it would have killed him. This is where kind of like that evil malevolence comes in. They are not forgiving. They catch, they kill. But even so, as creatures go, when I was encountering one, I didn't have to worry about dealing with it in the same way that this Tamas man did many years ago, hundreds of years ago. Luckily, when I spotted it, I spoke with the lab, keeping very much on the edge of the beaches and out of the way. I sure as hell was not going any closer to this thing. And we identified it as a Nuckelavee, and it turns out we, in the modern world, we have water cannons.
It's that easy.
Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah, we worked with the crowd control groups. They obviously kept the general public out of the way. Luckily, it was very early in the morning. We're talking like 3 o'clock in the morning. So, well, a lot of people can be out in cities and things at 3 o'clock in the morning, but luckily on the beaches, not many people were. But yeah, we made a cordon. We put it around, and I basically went back to the camp and fetched essentially our fire trucks. Got the hose pipe out, and using it, redirected it back towards the water.
That's pretty clever. So what did you tell the fire department, or were they in on the whole thing?
Oh, what did I tell the fire department? I'm a little bit proud about this one. I didn't tell them.
I should have known.
I turns out they're not that hard to hotwire.
Oh.
We went, borrowed one. It was definitely a bit of a trek to try and get it close enough to the beach that I was able to, spray it, because whereas the hose pipes for it are long, they're not that long, and luckily the rest of the team arrived around the time when I was about to start. They'd finished off dealing with the imps, and we coordinated and basically made a semicircle along the water, along the beach line, and forced it back. The only way it could have been easier is if it had been raining, and the only reason that would have been easier is because the damn thing wouldn't have come onto the surface. But yeah, apart from that, they are they are incredibly easy to deal with now from a modern perspective, but I can understand why these creatures made it such a position of hatred within Orkneys and
Yeah,
Scotland and everything else that kind of goes along
yeah,
in those.
definitely.
Well, I mean, for one, they're incredibly dangerous. If they can destroy crops, I mean, imagine if that thing if we hadn't have noticed it, if no one had told us about it or anything, and it got anywhere near one of the farms. I mean, if it can kill horses with its breath and giving a disease, it can kill farm animals. That is just
Yeah,
dangerous.
absolutely.
But the thing is, obviously, we don't do things like burning seaweed on the surface or along the beaches anymore. So, obviously, the main question is, why is it still coming up onto land now?
Do you have an answer, or should I propose one? Because I am
I am kind of curious about.
I
your
am
answer.
thinking of Asian cuisine, because a lot of Asian restaurants are using seaweeds and algae and stuff in their cooking. And when they grill it or cook it or whatever, you're gonna smell it, and maybe that's attracting the Nuckleavees.
Okay. That was one I wasn't expecting there, Chris. But yeah, no, it's
Could have been.
I mean, who knows? Maybe it is. We're not able to communicate with these creatures either, so you can't really get their perspective. But I mean, in my view, it's we are doing so much around the sea now, in and out of the sea. We're extracting oil. We've got tankers going across it non-stop. There is pollution from just us using it as a rule. And I think it's just setting these creatures off and making them kind of pop up a little bit more here and there. Because, I mean, that was one of the first times we'd seen them in years, and probably over the next few years that we've been having an increase in Nuckelavee sightings. So much so that it's actually made it onto some of the standard training for not just for if you're going to Scotland or anything, those country specific courses, but the ones if you're actually just going to be within the UK, it's managed to find its way onto that training course, and that's not something you tend to find.
Yeah, I mean, there's been studies that whales and all kinds of sea creatures are affected by pollution and noise and whatnot, so why not the Nuckelavee?
Yeah, makes sense.
Makes sense to me.
Evidently, the Myvo, the sea, as it's properly known, is not holding him down anymore. So,
That
like
might
I
be
say,
a problem.
it's relatively simple to handle these, but it's one of those ones that we kind of wish we didn't have to.
Yeah, I mean, you say they're easy to handle, and maybe in your position it is, but not everyone is going to be able to hotwire a fire truck. So I can see that there is still a very real danger for the common person.
Yeah,
And of course for crops that can't hotwire fire trucks
when it
either.
comes down to it, we're only just kind of setting up monitoring properly around the beaches around the world here and there. I mean, obviously, some countries have the monitoring system set up a lot earlier than others, just by the nature of the threats that they have in those areas. But yeah, I mean, we don't know if these things can climb. Can they climb up sheer cliffs? Pretty much all that we know is that they approach from beaches, but that's more a case of we haven't seen anything else, rather than it can't. So who knows? I mean, we could be looking at the start of an increase of activity in these kind of animals, and the research teams really need to kind of get on top of this a little bit more. I personally feel, but I mean, for God's sakes, we're worldwide. Because the research teams always need to get on top of something, don't they?
Yeah, that's true. But there is obviously an increase in sightings, so I think it's warranted that we focus some resources on that.
very much so, very much so. So, is there anything
I
else
do
you want to
wonder.
know?
Yeah, I do wonder in terms of poisoning crops and all that. Is an irrigation system enough to keep them away with its running water? So could we maybe tap into these to save some crops here and there without making too much of a
in a
fuss?
way, but I think that just stops that will just stop the Nuckelavee. Whereas
Yeah.
what kills the crops is their toxic breath. They breathe out, and that obviously passes over water and whatnot, and kind of permeates into the general climate and atmosphere, and that's what kills the crops off.
So that they have a range on their breath.
Yeah, think of it.
Okay.
They're ranged attackers. Although, having seen the size of one of their roofs, they can probably do some pretty good melee damage as well.
Probably.
Yeah. I mean, you've got to remember, this is basically a massive skinless horse with a human attached to, or human's torso and head attached to its back, that has a massive red eye that stares deep into your soul. You've got to handle that.
Well, that sounds absolutely
horrifying. Consider the fact that you can pretty much see the black blood pumping through their veins. Yeah.
Oh, jeez.
It looks like basically someone was starting to skin a horse and it woke up.
Well, that would explain why it's annoyed.
And that would also be a wonderful way to give everyone nightmares and leave them on that. So,
True.
That was our discussion a little bit about the Nuckelavee. One of the very first creatures I ever handled as an operator, and one that is very much stuck in my mind.
Yeah. What a creature to handle on your first time.
It was definitely a moment. Yeah, that's that will make it for our very first episode, and the very first creature that you are now aware of in the world.
Yeah. So if you're planning to burn kelp, don't
do it in the Orkneys. What about our next episode, Chris? We're going to be passing the book off to each other bit by bit while we talk about partially about our careers, but also about the creatures that we've encountered throughout it. So next time is Chris's go, and give us a bit of a sneak peek of the first creature.
And next time we're going to talk about... it was not my first encounter, but one of the first, and one I recently had a close encounter with, and it's a basilisk, which is kind of funny, even since we're talking about poisonous breath, and that's pretty much the basilisk
we've got a bit of
thing.
A theme going on for these first two. But,
yeah, seems like it.
Yes, I don't believe I've come across a basilisk myself, or at least not directly. So I'm very interested in those ones, but I do know that they're on the more dangerous list.
Yeah, then you definitely have to know how to handle them.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you have to go through the more high threat training. I think they tend to call it to deal with them.
Yeah, that it's a whole thing. It's a big course you have to take, and an exam on top of that, and yeah, even then you need to stay concentrated. But we'll get more into that next week when we talk about it, and don't want to take too much away.
That makes up our first episode. So thank you very much for anyone who's listening. If you enjoyed that, then please do follow this podcast, and we'll speak to you next time.
Yeah. See you next time, folks.